Okay, it's official. Welcome everyone to this Profitable Regeneration webinar series and the Profitable Steward podcast. My name is Jared Sorensen. It's a privilege to host these every other week. We do these on the second and fourth Thursdays live. If you're listening to the podcast, we invite you to jump on and join. You just search for AgSteward, look for the Profitable Steward on Facebook, and you should be able to find us and find a link to be able to join this. So we have people here from throughout the United States that are on live, and even a couple international. Looks like we have one from Australia, one from Canada, and we welcome you. We're grateful that you're able to be here. For those that are on here live, this is going to be somewhat interactive in the sense that you can type in the chat if you have questions, and I'll read those off, and we'll also open it up for question and answers towards the end. We want to be able to help and serve you as in the best way possible. So to be able to do that, I invite you to go ahead and type in the chat, those that are here live, those that are listening to the recording, write down what your number one intention is for listening to this or participating in this class here today. So we'll give you just a minute to do that. And those that are on here live, go ahead and type it in the chat. I really believe that it's important that we write down what we intend. And as we do that, then the universe and God and our fellow man, they can come and serve us in the best way possible. If we just kind of leave it to chance, sometimes we get what we ask for, right? And so yeah, definitely increasing knowledge. Grateful for that, John. And who else has an intention for this class today? And we'll share that here. Learn new stuff, learn tips to be profitable, successful, and also make things easier. Absolutely. We hope that we can help you with that. At AgSteward, our mission is to help family farmers and ranchers become highly profitable, regenerate the land that they steward, and create legacy businesses that last for generations. We take the long view as we work with individuals one-on-one and as families and as businesses. We always have that question in the back of our mind: what is this going to do for generations? We're not into the quick fix. Sometimes we do have to take the Band-Aid approach and make things work, get us through the year, get us through the season. I definitely know how that works, being a rancher myself. But we always have to take a step back and say, okay, what is this going to do for our great grandchildren on down the line? What are these decisions? How are they going to affect them? So this is going to be somewhat presentation mode here. So if you are listening to the recording, go to YouTube if you want to see the slides, and you can get more of the story that way. And the YouTube channel is the Profitable Ag Steward. You can search for that and watch any of the recordings. So yeah, thank you guys for sharing your intentions here. 10 intentions to learn. Absolutely. Switching to regenerative agriculture. I like that. That's good. There's a lot of talk about regenerative agriculture, and it's kind of the new buzzword that's replaced sustainability. We at AgSteward, we believe in the principles of regenerative agriculture, and we believe that it's way more than just a buzzword. It's truly what society needs to be able to solve the soil health crisis as well as the food crisis throughout the world. Like anything else really is not sustainable, and it's certainly not regenerative. And so it's way more than just a marketing ploy or a buzzword to us. We believe that it's critical that we are regenerative in the way that we manage. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and share some slides. So my family and I ranch in northeastern Nevada. We were privileged and blessed to be the parents of 9 children, soon to be 3 grandchildren. We've got 3 daughters-in-law. Our oldest 3 boys are married. And we believe in creating a lasting legacy. And so we're very focused on building a family-friendly business. I am the third generation. Our children are the fourth generation on the ranch here in northeastern Nevada. We operate on two sides of a mountain range, um, approximately under stewardship, 24 plus thousand acres. It's high desert, and so we range from irrigated, which is highly productive, to uplands, rocky, steep hill country, which is very minimal production, very low production and capacity as far as forage. And so we kind of have a diversity of scenery. Several years ago, we were in a drought, which is kind of common for those of us in the West, right? And as we've seen, whether you believe in climate change or not, we've definitely seen an increase in the severity of weather. And so it wasn't the most recent drought, but it was the previous drought. So somewhere around 2013, I believe it was. I remember being extremely concerned for our business viability, for the land, for the livestock that we were stewarding. And I'm a Christian, a praying man, and I believe that God answers our prayers. And so, as I often do, I pray over our crops and fields and flocks and families and those things that I have stewardship over. And at this time, I had made that a consistent prayer, and perhaps prayed maybe with more intensity as the drought became more severe, fairly extreme. So I think that probably would have been about 2013. We were into our second year of pretty dry conditions. And I remember, I don't necessarily hear voices when I pray, but I had the clear impression come into my mind and the thoughts or feelings in my heart. And I believe they came from God. As I prayed for rain, the thought came, what are you doing with the water that you've been given? And I had to stop and think, we do have spring runoff, and that irrigates a small portion of our ranch, but that small portion of our ranch represents about 50% of the dry matter production of the ranch. And so it's pretty significant. It's 10%, approximately 10% of the ranch, or a little bit less, is irrigated, but it produces 50% of the capacity of the ranch. And so for time and effort focusing on those irrigated acres is important. And I realized that I'd been not as good a steward as I could have been over the water. And perhaps I did not spread it out and utilize it as my grandpa would have. And so I repented of that. And I really started to be more conscious about how I stewarded this God-given resource, this water. And it was interesting. The drought didn't end, but it was nearly over 10 years ago. As I remember, we had the feed that we needed. And I also learned the skills that have served me over the last more than a decade. Skills of being able to be a better steward, not only of the water, but also to be able to realize that source of energy is something that I steward. And as I focused more upon that, I was able to realize that applied in many other areas of life as well. That sometimes it's not so much about how much we are given, it's what we do with what we are given. And I'm grateful for that experience that taught me the principles of stewardship. Let's make this interactive. John, would you be willing to read this? So this is not a monologue. I see. This is what happens when you're on camera. We'll call on you.
All right. Stewardship. Stewardship designates a sacred, spiritual, or temporal responsibility to take care of something that belongs to God, for which we are accountable.
All right. So a sacred, spiritual, temporal responsibility. It's not just the spiritual side of it that I believe we're responsible for. It's also the temporal. Meaning that our livelihoods, the way that we choose to use the gifts and talents that we've been given to serve our fellow man, to be able to provide for our families, those things we will be responsible for as well. And we will, I believe, give an accounting one day for that. And perhaps not one day, perhaps we can give an accounting every day for how we are stewarding those resources that we've been given. So thank you, John, for reading that. This is a little bit longer one. Somebody who's not on camera. Do I have a volunteer? Let's see. I know some of you might be multitasking, but go ahead and unmute and read this one. This one's a little bit longer.
I can read it. God left us the world unfinished for man to work. Ooh, I can't read it. See it all. And skill upon. He left the electricity in the cloud and the. I can't make it small enough to see them up. Let me see. Okay. God left us the world unfinished for man to work his skill upon. He left electricity in the cloud and the oil in the earth. He left the rivers unbridged and the forests unfelled and the cities unbuilt. God gives to man the challenge of raw materials, not the ease of unfinished things. He leaves the pictures unpainted and the music unsung and the problems unsolved, that man might know the joys and glories of creation.
Yeah, I really like that quote by Thomas Monson. I believe in God. I believe that He's created all things, but He didn't necessarily make it easy for us, right? And why would that be? Well, because we need to learn these principles of stewardship along the way. He left many of these resources unharnessed, and it's up to us to be able to figure out if they should be harnessed, how they should be used, and the best way to be able to use them. And so thank you, Julie. Appreciate you reading that. So take a minute, everybody, and write down something that you want. If you need a little more context, this could be specifically in relation to what you want within your agricultural ventures. Maybe you want to own a 1,000-cow ranch. Maybe you want to just own a ranch. Maybe you want to step away from your job in town. Maybe you want your kids to be able to come back to the ranch. Maybe you want a successor for the ranch. Do you want to be profitable? Do you want to be truly regenerative? Do you want to build soil? What is it that you want? So take a minute, whether you're here live on the webinar or you're listening to the recording, pull out your phone, pull out your journal. For me, this thing right here, this is one of the most valuable tools in management. And I've filled up dozens of these, generally 2 or 3 a year. And this is just a journal, just a simple leather-bound journal. And I keep notes. And for me, that's a way, it's not necessarily a diary so much as it is insights and questions and notes from classes that I take. And it's very helpful to be able to write those things down. It helps me to remember. So what do you want? Everybody got something? Oh, we even have some people in the chat. Yeah, thank you for writing that. I'll share what we have so far. To be profitable and regenerative, a place that can be used to teach others and help others. All the above that was mentioned, to be free of debt and to be profitable. I like that one. Thank you. I want to remain focused on the difference between needs and wants. Very good. Thanks for sharing that. So hopefully everybody has something down that they want. And we'll come back to that. Appreciate those who've shared in the comments. And for those, yeah, if you're listening with the family, feel free to share with those that are on your team. Hey, this is what I really want. So this is for those that have been involved with AgSteward. This will look a little bit familiar. This is the stewardship balance. And so basically we have a fulcrum in the middle with the steward on one side and the stewardships on the other side, the steward being on the left side and the stewardships on the right side. And I believe that those things are always going to find that equilibrium. They will always come back into balance, the steward and the stewardships. And so as we look at that, we think, maybe we want to be a cow-calf man. Maybe we want to have livestock. And if we're going to have livestock, it's going to take some money. and it's going to take some facilities to be able to manage those livestock. And so those stewardships would be on the right-hand side. As we stack on the stewardships, if we don't have balance, then sometimes those things that we are stewards over tend to fall off, and nature will always bring things back into balance. We see that in soil, we see that in natural systems, and I believe that this is also a system that will seek for balance. So as they fall off, then balance will be sought. So meaning that if we don't have the capacity as a steward to manage the stewardships, some of those stewardships will be taken from us. So what do we do to be able to bring things into balance, to increase our ability to steward those things that God's given us, those things that we want to have? Remember the question, it's not what do you need, it's what do you want? And there's power in wanting things. And maybe we've been taught through our lives that we shouldn't want, like it's wrong to want. We should just focus on, well, what do I really need? And I appreciate the question, the difference between wants and needs. I submit that it's not wrong to want things, that I believe that God wants us to want things. And the closer we come to understanding how God operates, the more in alignment our will be with his, and the more likely those things that we want will be righteous desires, will be things that will actually serve us. They won't be for our detriment. So we can want money. Money in and of itself is just a tool. It's a resource, just like the water that I managed. It has flow. It can come into our lives. It can leave our lives. We can choose to channel it in different directions to help things to grow, or it can run right through and kind of cause erosion and leave a gap and leave holes. And I think all of us know stories of people, who have come into money and maybe it's not been the best way to serve them. But if you look at this little diagram here, perhaps this sheds some light on why. Because they got the stewardships, but they didn't grow the steward. So that's the first step in being able to bring things into balance, to have more stewardships on the right-hand side, is to grow the steward on the left-hand side. And how do we do that? We do that by participating in programs like this. We do that by spending time asking ourselves a question of why are we here? What did God put us on this earth to do? What is our unique mission? What are our gifts and talents? What are my values? We write those things down, we study on them, we make it a lifelong quest to better understand ourselves. And as we do so, then that helps us to grow spiritually, intellectually, socially. And so we're growing the steward. The other way that we can do that is to be able to move the fulcrum, right? Somebody really smart said once, give me a big enough lever and I can move the world. A big lever with a fulcrum placed at the right place, and you can lift exponentially more than if you're not using that lever. So how do we move that fulcrum or that balance point? Well, the way that I choose to do that is through business. That's the way that we can expand our reach, expand our cause. So a business or a cause, something that we can get behind, even if it's not necessarily a formal business, that is a way that we can leverage. Because as we grow and as we put ourselves out there more, then that attracts more people to us. It allows us to be a better service to our fellow man, to better serve the community and better serve the world. And so that is one of the key ways that I see that moving that fulcrum over to the right is by operating businesses. And we love to be able to help businesses to be profitable and to be regenerative in the process. And the next way that we do that is we grow our team on that left-hand side. So that weight increases on the left-hand side using this analogy. We grow our team by learning leadership skills, by attracting the right people, putting them on the right seats in the bus, having the right bus to begin with, which could represent the business or the cause we're about, and then growing that team. So these are the key ways that we bring those things into balance. So just as we're going to pause here for a minute. And so asking yourself on the thing that you wrote down that you wanted, was it on the left-hand side or the right-hand side? And again, you can go ahead and put that in the chat or just respond to that question yourself. The thing that you wrote down that you wanted, was it left or was it right? Was it on the steward or was it on the stewardship side? So maybe some of both, right? Might be on the right side. Okay. So the question for you is, and be pondering on this as we go through these principles of stewardship. If it was on the right-hand side, what do we need to do on the left-hand side to grow the steward, to build the team, to move the fulcrum in your unique situation so that you have the capacity to increase your stewardships? And again, I believe there's power in asking those questions. Write that question down, ask it, wait for the answer to come. What do you need to do to grow yourself, or that left-hand side of the scale, to have more capacity for stewardships on the right-hand side? Okay, any questions so far? Okay, we're going to roll into these principles here. And there we go. So there's some different principles of stewardship. The name the profitable steward came from the parable from Christ in Matthew about the profitable steward. And stewardship is something that has been near and dear to my heart for a long time, for decades. And I've studied on it and pondered on it and asked the question, what does it mean to be a profitable steward? And so by all means, this is not an all-inclusive list. These are just some of the things. I believe there's 4 principles here that I'm going to share, and maybe a little bit of a backstory on some of them. But first is everyone is a steward. It doesn't matter if you're homeless. It doesn't matter if you're managing thousands of acres. Everyone is a steward. And I've seen individuals who, well, yeah, good story. I was trying to think of a story. I've shared the story of the homeless man before. You can listen to it in previous podcasts, but I'll share the story of my dad. My dad is definitely a good steward. He managed, at one point under his management, he probably had over 20 employees, livestock wise, 14,000 commercial ewes, and somewhere around, I don't know, at that point we didn't have as many cattle, but probably 600 or 800 cows, 20 employees on nearly 1 million acres. So pretty vast desert operation, and he was managing that. He had the capacity to be able to be a leader, and so he could he was able to see what was going on even over that vast acreage and many employees and lots of livestock. He kind of had his finger on the pulse, and definitely it was a very demanding position for him as he did that. But then it was interesting as I saw him later. If those who've been involved, that the story that he left to serve a mission when I was quite young, 23 years old, and spent the next nearly 12 to 15 years, he and my mother, serving missions throughout Central South America and a little bit into Asia and places as well. But I had the opportunity to go and to visit him when he was serving in Guadalajara, Mexico. And he had a yard. His backyard and his condominium was probably not much bigger than this bedroom that I'm in. So maybe 20 by 30 square foot yard. And he took just as much care of that yard as he did the millions of acres that he managed previously. He would water, they would bring in plants, they would take care of it. When he and my mother were living in Utah, they had a condominium there. And again, it wasn't even a yard, it was just a walkway. And he recruited me and my wife to haul in paving stones when we went there to visit him, and planters, and they converted that small little walkway into a beautiful little sitting area, a beautiful little garden. And so it didn't matter how much he was a steward over. What mattered was that he was a good steward. And so that he definitely taught me that principle of stewardship. Okay, so everyone is a steward, and that principle of how, not how much. I remember that by H2, how, not how much. And my dad illustrated that principle as not how much you were a steward over, but really how you stewarded it. Stewardship is greater than ownership. I believe that everyone is a steward again. You don't have to have ownership to have stewardship, and you don't have to have, just because you have ownership doesn't necessarily mean that you are a steward. Again, back to the example of my father, he didn't own the place in Mexico, but he definitely stewarded it like it was his own. Many of us operate on leased properties. And I think that's what sets us apart in many cases, is the ability to be able to improve upon those. And that when we're in a market right now when cattle prices are high and demand for leases are great, if we have these stewardship principles in our heart and in our practices, then that will exemplify to the landlord that, hey, we really care about this. It's not about who owns it. That said, I do firmly believe in ownership, and as illustrated by John Locke and many of the founding fathers, that is a right that we need to protect. But we don't have to be an owner to be a steward. And the last principle is, as we increase our capacity, we are able to increase our stewardships. So again, back to how do we increase that capacity? It's by building the team. It's by gaining increased knowledge, increasing the skills. Those things that are on the left-hand side, the things that may not be as tangible, they might be harder to measure. They may not be as fun even, right? How many of us want to go and learn the skills and pay the price to learn the skills, or hire the coaches, work with mentors, take the classes that we need to be better stewards? But yet, as we do that, then we can have more influence on the right side of the scale. So I know that these principles are true because I've seen them in my own life. I have seen myself as well as other individuals who think, okay, the way that we need to be, we just need to run more cows. We need to lease more acres. We need to buy more land. We need more money. All those things are on the right-hand side of the scale. And we might be able to increase those things through effort. But if we don't increase the other side, the left-hand side, things will be brought into balance. And again, I've seen it personally that, some of those stewardships will be taken from that side, will be taken from us so that they are brought back into balance. And so when we work with individuals at AgSteward, maybe it's a profitability issue, maybe it's a production issue, I'm always going to be looking at both sides. I'm going to be looking at the seen and the unseen, be looking at what's above ground and what's below ground, so to speak, and literally, right? But the measurable and more of the intangible, the things that might be harder to measure, like your capacity to lead, for example, would be one thing. If you want to build a team, if you want to scale and you need to build a team, but you don't have the leadership abilities, then you will, you might build that team, but maybe they won't stick around. And we tend to blame, well, man, it's hard to find good help these days, right? Well, good help is a reflection of the leadership of the employer. And so we ask those hard questions and we look at it and we say, okay, is it Which side of the scale is it on? So let me ask you guys that are here and those that are listening, where do you have more influence? And again, go ahead and throw it in the chat. Is it on the left or is it on the right? I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. I just want to get your perspective on it. Where do we have the most influence? On the steward or on the stewardships? Okay, we've got on the steward on the left. Yeah, I think so. I think that we do. And I think those are the things that are in our circle of influence, our circle of control. And the more that we focus on that, the more empowered we truly are. And really, back to the analogy, the more leverage we have over the things that are on the right-hand side of the scale, our stewardships. So what is something that you personally can do to increase your capacity to steward? Again, there's not a right or wrong answer. What is something that you personally can do to increase your capacity to become a more profitable, a better steward? Think about that, write that down, and commit to take action on that. That action could be sharing it with somebody else. Like, you may not be able to go out and do it right now, but there's power in sharing it. And yeah, I appreciate that. Network and attend classes like this. Somebody threw it in the chat. Spend more time working on the business instead of in the business. I'm glad that you picked up on that, Donnie and Tricia. Understanding your why. Yeah, so as we look at the working on the business, working in the business, Whitby versus Whitby and ranching for profit terminology. Which side is the working on the business? Which side is working in the business? It might not be as fun, but it doesn't have to be drudgery either. Like building our capacity, I believe we're made just like our ranches. You know, we all hear these stories of through proper grazing and proper management, people are able to 2x to 3x to maybe 10x their carrying capacity. What is our capacity? I mean, if we can do that with the land, what could we do with ourselves? What could God do with us if we just got out of the way and let him do his work through us? Those are the questions that I like to ask myself, because I think the most limiting thing from keeping us from increasing our capacity of becoming the profitable steward that we want to become is our own paradigms, our own limitations in the way we think, in our programming. And if we can reset those things and get past those things, then, man, I mean, literally, I believe the sky's the limit. If we believe in a God that's infinite and he created us, why couldn't he create us to do infinite things? Certainly, we're going to have to learn along the way, right? But that's part of the process. So yeah, I appreciate the things that you guys have put in the chat. So those are the 4 principles. Again, type in the chat what they are. Number 1, everyone is a steward. Number 2, it's how, not how much. Number 3, stewardship greater than ownership. Number 4, increased capacity will increase stewardship. There's that equal sign. So again, there's the balance, increased capacity, increased stewardship, and that coincides with kind of the graph or the diagram that we wrote. You know, sometimes we go through life and we find that we're going along, we're doing our jobs, we're performing at our best, but yet we can get stuck. This could have happened this year, but I had the wisdom from prior experience to not drive there with the tractor. I did it once last year, though, in a very similar place, but this was actually, I think, 2017. Went up to clean a ditch up in a field that's brushy, doesn't have a good sod formation, and just didn't look that way. water wasn't even on the surface, but man, it got soft in a hurry. And so sunk the tractor up to the axles on one side, and the other side was still on a little bit of solid ground. And it's not the only time I've gotten stuck. It's kind of a annual occurrence, multi-year occurrence, but I've gotten really good at getting out. So in this instance, I'd actually called for help. I don't think there was another piece of equipment readily available, so I called for some reinforcements. But in the meantime, instead of just sitting there twiddling my thumbs, I went and looked around and off to the kind of right where you can't see in the picture, kind of more back where I was standing. I found some tree limbs and branches and collected those and used the bucket of the tractor to be able to lift up the front end and put those branches and tree limbs underneath the front, and was able to move forward a little bit, put some tree branches and things behind the tire and back up onto them and do that several times. And by the time my son got there with the four-wheeler to be able to help me get out, I'd been able to work myself out, left some pretty good ruts in the field that should now somewhat filled in. But sometimes that's how it goes in life, right? We're using the tools that we've been given, we're doing the job that we need to do, but we can be stuck, and we can lead to frustration and wanting to quit and give up. And we don't want that for you guys. No matter where you're at on your journey, whether you're just starting out or you're seasoned down the ways or anywhere in between, that is the purpose of AgSteward, is to be able to help you on your journey. Like, don't stay stuck. Don't just abandon it because you've had one bad experience, or because you don't know what to do next, or you don't feel like you have the resources to be able to do those things that God's put on your heart to do. We hope that you will reach out, and just like I did, I reached out for help, but I also looked around and I looked for the resources that were available to me. I looked for the help that was right around me, and I used my ingenuity to be able to get myself out of that situation. And so with that, we hope that we can be of service to you. What does that look like? At AgSteward, we work with individuals and families. We love to work with couples and multi-generational businesses to build a lasting legacy. Like, that is our focus, is that, it's not just a flash in the pan, a 1 year or decade long. Like, this is multi-generational. And so when we work with individuals, we have that framework in mind. And with the coaching that we do, I guess we call it coaching or mentoring. I don't really know what to call it. It's more of a hybrid between coaching, consulting, and mentoring. Because we don't just look, the consultant might look at the right side of the scale and say, you've got production issues, add more fertilizer, do more inputs to increase your output. And that's good. There's a need for that. But we also need to look at, okay, what are the things that are going on beneath the surface? How are your relationships? How's your relationship with yourself? How's your relationship with your higher power, with those key members on your team, specifically your spouse and family members? Those are the things that truly matter. And we can have the most successful business on the right-hand side, and if things are falling apart on the left-hand side, we're not going to have the fulfillment that we desire. And maybe we find that, man, we just get burnt out and this is no longer fun, and we quit. We leave that tractor stuck in the mud and we walk away from it. And we forego all the effort that we put into building this business because things got hard and we didn't have the help that we needed to be able to get us through a situation that maybe we couldn't see through on our own. And so we invite you, specifically those who are committed to regenerative agriculture. That is our niche. Those who are either have a current business that they're looking to scale, or a successful business that they're looking to 10x their growth, or a business where they're just starting out and they're like, yes, I want to replace my income. Those are kind of the three levels that we have. It'd be kind of the starter package, mid-tier package, and then the higher level, and they're priced accordingly. And so what we do is we invite you to jump on a Zoom call, and we'll explore if it's right to work with us. And we'll make sure that we can find ways that we can help you. Like, we're not going to sign you up and commit and take your money and ask you to give of your time if we're not certain that, hey, we have resources and ability and you have the capacity. And most importantly, it's measuring your commitment level. And that's really what it comes down to. And so it's kind of a get to know each other. Let's see if it's a good fit. And if it is, we'll talk about what it looks like. And I can guarantee, I don't think anybody's left a call with me or our team without having at least one resource or action item that they can do as a result of having met with us. And that's really our goal, right? Is if it's working with us, great. Sometimes we might refer you to somebody else, or we would say, okay, yes, we know you're committed, but it may not be the right time. Go and do these things first. And then when you do that, come back in 6 months and let's revisit it. And let's make sure at that point that it's the right time. So the way that works is we've got a link, which I'll drop in the chat here. And I think we tried to make it a fairly simple URL. It's agsteward.co/call. We'll put it in the show notes also for those that are watching online or that are listening. So that's basically the scheduling app to be able to jump on. Likely it will be myself fielding the call or one of our coworkers here at AgSteward, but most of the time they're myself, and so that'll go to my calendar link and we'll jump on and we'll explore if it's a good fit. Again, who is this for? These are for individuals who are committed to being regenerative. They're committed to building a legacy business, to really becoming a profitable steward. Who's it not for? I would say it's probably for individuals who are just kind of the enthusiasts, who are more homesteaders. They might be passionate about regenerative agriculture, but they're not either ready or willing or wanting to build a business out of it. Like, we have other resources that we can point you to, and certainly would glad to help. And we appreciate that you're part of this listening or part of this webinar. But yeah, this is for people who are committed on the business side of it. So it's agsteward.co/call, and that just basically takes you to the scheduling app. You can plug in a time that works for you for a half-hour appointment. So with that, let's open it up and let's get some epiphanies, insights, takeaways, questions from those that are here live, and we'll kind of open it up for some discussion in the about 15 minutes that we have left. So let's type in what your biggest takeaway is from the presentation today. How many of you are brand new to AgSteward? Like, is this your very, very first experience? If you are, put a number 1 in the chat. I know some of you I recognize and see some familiar faces, see some familiar names out there. And we appreciate that. But is there anybody that is brand new? Yeah, Trisha and Donnie, it's good insight. Appreciate that. So they said we need to keep reminding ourselves that we need to spend more time on the $1,000 an hour jobs and delegate the $10 an hour jobs. Absolutely, I think that's true. That's the way that we leverage. And so for you guys and for everybody, what would be those $1,000 an hour jobs that you would focus on? What are the things that you are uniquely capable of doing? Consider that. One of the questions that comes up often is, was specifically with the fairings question there, or insight. So we all talk about the what be, or working on the business. What if you don't have the skill set to truly do that? What should you do then? For example, we all know it's important to create a cash flow budget, to be able to figure our gross margins, keep our balance sheet up to date. But what if numbers are just not your thing? That might be the $1,000 an hour job, but neither you nor your team members either have the capability or the desire to be able to do it. What should we do in those instances? And if anybody has ideas on that, it's a legitimate question. I don't know if I completely have the answer to that. As you guys that have listened to me before, you guys know that I've read a lot of Dan Sullivan's books, and one of those books is Who Not How. And so rather than asking the question, how do I get this done, recognizing that it needs to be done, specifically in this instance, the financials, how do I make sure that they're done, not just for my banker, right? Because that's a kind of have to. That's almost getting your financials done for your banker is almost more of a working in the business, because there's a deadline. I'm talking about using them strategically for planning. That would be more working on the business side. That would be more a left side of the scale. So in asking who, not how, yeah, Lee says networking, finding the right person to put on the bus and fill that seat. Yeah, that's kind of what I've come up with as well. Like, we don't have to be everything in a business. If we feel like we do, we're going to be quite limited. And granted, now initially, when we create our organizational chart, when we work with individuals one-on-one, likely you're going to be wearing a lot of those hats initially, but yet we're still going to delineate, okay, what are these responsibilities? And as finances allow, and as your capacity to lead allows, then you start filling those other things that you're not, are not necessarily within your wheelhouse, right? Maybe you even can do it, but it's not something that you're passionate about doing. So you find somebody else that can do those things. So good question. Good. Yeah, networking is super powerful. Any other questions you guys have? So here's a question for you. How do you measure success? What is your personal measurement for success? And again, invite you to write that down. Success is it a financial? Is it the number of acres you manage? Is it number of clients served? Number of customers? How do you measure success? I think this is probably somewhat subjective. And it's a little bit harder to measure the things that are on that left side of the steward's capacity. But I would encourage you to somehow quantify more of what's on the left side than what's on the right side of that scale. I believe the left side of the scale, that encompasses relationships. I believe it encompasses more things that are going to be eternal, like the knowledge that we gain here. And again, back to the quote at the beginning, we are responsible for both the temporal and the spiritual. And certainly it's not wrong to measure and have the goal to make X amount of money, or to manage so many cows or so many acres. But yeah, how do you personally measure success? And if it is something that's maybe more intangible, what is a good measurement that we can use? So with our clients, oftentimes I'll just ask them to rate it, and it seems really extremely subjective, but it works. So I would just say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy have you been over the last month? Rate your relationships over the last month on a scale of 1 to 10. Rate your overall quality of life. Rate your sleep, your ability to be able to sleep. Rate your stress level. That would be more on the negative side, right? A 10 on the stress level would be a negative score. But if we start to think about those things and really consider, like, what does that quality of life mean? We can have all the things, the cows, the trucks, the trailers, the horses, all the things on the right-hand side, and we can still be miserable and unhappy and stressed and depressed and even to the point that we might be suicidal because things are not right in our own lives, right? So let's work on those things, and then the other things will come into order. If we're always focused on, I'll be happy when we have these things, we're never going to be happy. We need to choose happiness now. We need to choose to be content now. Yeah. So very good. All right. Well, perfect. This has been kind of short and sweet, but I appreciate those that have participated in this webinar. And again, I'll drop the link in the chat here to book a call. Look forward to talking to those of you who we actually have some spots open here as early as next week, and look forward to visiting with you one-on-one and seeing if it's a good fit to work together, seeing how AgSteward could help and best serve you on your regenerative journey. We encourage you that no matter what, never quit learning. Always continue to increase your capacity. Remember that we do these things twice a month on the second and fourth Thursdays. And we also do quarterly summits and quarterly 2-day intensive classes. The next one that we have is coming up the first week in August. And those of you that are signed up with AgSteward that are registered for this webinar, you'll get the information. Those who are listening to the recording, the URL for the next one, it should always be the same. And that will be legacy.agsteward.co. It's going to populate the dates in there. Right now it has going to the last one, which if you register will get you the recording. But here in the next week or so, we're going to put the dates in for the one in August. And we encourage you to jump in and join us and continue your learning journey with us. So appreciate you guys being part of this, and we hope you can join us again soon.